Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Kennedy School Playground Renovation Project. This is going to be our second community meeting. We're just going to take a minute or two for people to jump on, and then we'll start the presentation. All right, I'm seeing some more people kind of trickling in, but we can start kicking off this presentation while people are starting to join. Seems like we have about 25 members right now, so we can begin this meeting. So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to come to this meeting on the Kennedy Schoolyard Playground Renovation Project. This is our second community meeting, although we've had a bunch of different engagement events, both with the school and with different members of the public. But this main meeting is going to be presenting some of our preferred schematic design for the playground project. Next slide, please. So just some quick introductions. My name is John Bronincant. I work with the City of Somerville in the Public Space and Urban Forestry Department. I'm the Senior Public Space Planner as well as the project manager for this project. I'd also just like to thank and recognize Councillor Naima Said. She is at the City Council meeting tonight, but is very excited for this project and is very excited to hear more about what everyone thinks about this project. I would also really like to thank Principal Marshall and the school staff. They have been tremendous in this project and really appreciate all their support that they've given us on this. And I'd also just like to hand it over to our landscape architect, CBA, to give a quick introduction.
Terrific. So I'm DJ Shagnon, principal at CBA Landscape Architects, Somerville resident and parent. My kids are at the East, well, now East and the high school. Yeah, happy to be involved in this and continuing to work on this.
I'm Preston Holloman, landscape architect at CBA. Um,
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chaitrali. I'm the landscape designer at CBA.
Thank you. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So just as little housekeeping slides at the beginning, so you can stay up to date with information on this project by following the Summer Voice webpage. You can follow that link or scan that QR code, or just as easily, you can Google the Kennedy Playground renovation project in Somerville, and the first link should pop up with that Summer Voice page. Also follow our Instagram, and any questions or comments you have about this project or anything park related, please feel free to email me at jbrownicant@somervillema.gov. Next slide, please.
And just as a quick interjection, this PDF of this presentation is also available from the Summer Voice page, right? Or getting
Thank you
uploaded
so
to it.
much, DJ. Yes.
Yeah.
So, for anyone who would like to follow along at their own pace, there's a PDF of this presentation on that Summer Voice webpage. There's a Documents tab over to the right-hand side, and it should be the last document on that list. Embedded in that document also is alt text. So, for anyone who needs to follow along with an auto reader, there is that support embedded in it as well. Thank you,
And
DJ.
the hyperlinks are live in the PDF. So
Yes. So I know Zoom has just gone through an update, so this picture is not as accurate as it was, but you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom here. Sometimes it's under the reactions. For me, it's just a raise hand feature. So please use the raise hand feature if you have any questions or comments, or feel free to use the chat as well. But we will kind of save all the questions for the end of our presentation. And then just a quick rules of engagement slide. So with this project and all of our projects and engagement, we need to work on targeted universalism. So first, what we need to do is identify what we can all agree on as universal standards, acknowledge that people are situated at different distances from that standard, and then develop solutions that target the gap to reach the universal standards. So, as an agreement for this process, everyone deserves to be respected, have an opportunity to participate, and to be heard without interruption. Therefore, take note of how often you speak, consider those who don't have a voice here today and how our discussions impact them, and listen respectfully and assume the best intentions. Next slide, please. So here you can just see the project extents for this project that we're doing. So it encompasses pretty much everything in the front of the schoolyard. This plan is an aerial of the Kennedy Schoolyard. Elm Street, Cherry Street, and Sartwell Street hug the parking lot and playground, and we are looking at everything that encompasses those three roads as our project area. So the two basketball courts, the bus drop-off, and that parking lot itself. It is a pretty large site, and we are very excited to give it the refresh that it needs, as it has been nearly 30 years since it's seen some love. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to CBA Landscape Architects to show you the preferred design.
Excellent. Thank you, John, for the intro. Yeah, so basically just a brief recap on how we got to where we got. Skipping all of the back history that I'm sure a lot of folks know of the Kennedy School Community's long advocacy for the project that got a CPA grant to fund the design and funding for all of that, and resulted in CBA getting selected after an RFP process as the designers. So we kicked this off at Back to School Night this year with John and I presenting a table. We had some input sessions from the staff and Harvest Fair and talked to students. And then we had an online survey that helped sort of give us a sense of what the community was really looking for, in addition to all the other feedback. And a great community meeting in early December where we presented the site analysis, the precedent images, and so forth. We'll do a recap on that a little later in this meeting. Had some great discussion out of that. There was a second online survey in mid-December where we got reactions to those design concepts from both the people who were at the meeting as well as many of the folks who weren't able to make it. And we got some wonderful feedback through that. We had additional interactions with students, staff, families, and so forth throughout the fall and the winter. And we're here tonight to present what we think is the definitive proposed design for the schoolyard construction, based on all of that previous discussion, as well as input from various city departments, from CPAC, the Special Ed Parents Advisory Council, from the Somerville Commission for Persons with Disabilities, and all the other various stakeholders that have really gelled together into what we are really excited to show you. Looking ahead into the future after tonight's meeting and any further feedback, we're going to finalize the definitive design, work up construction documents, and then the plan is currently pending City Council approval of the funding, right? Well, we have construction funding. The good news is, since the last meeting, the project was fully awarded the CPA grant that we were asking for. So nice work, John.
Yes,
Right.
and City Council the Finance Committee voted the funds on Tuesday, so we're just waiting for a general
wonderful.
vote from City Council.
Excellent. So then once that's cleared, the plan is I'll talk more about this later, but the plan is to split construction into two phases. One phase to address the parking lot, the entry, the expansion of the playground area, and so forth, and tackle some of the critical infrastructure that really needs to happen to build the whole project, including stormwater management and drainage. And then once that's done, rather than have the construction continue into the fall, and to give us a little bit more time to really fine tune the playground and make it the best that it can possibly be, the city has made the decision to break at the end of summer 2026, and have no disturbance during the school year, basically, and do the playground renovations next summer, in summer 2027 as phase two. So it'll be two construction phases, but I think I'm hoping folks will see that the design that we've come up with really allows us to break it into two phases and have a definitive improvement to the schoolyard and the play space, even just through that first phase. Like I said, we had the initial public survey back in December, got 78 responses, generated great discussion. We had discussions about what features people thought were most important in an inclusive playground, what age ranges were valued and needed, and it really clearly is targeted at the school age population that uses the site, which is great. Different play equipment styles and a host of other questions that then informed the project goals as well as informing the schematic designs we showed. So again, a quick recap of what those goals are is to design Somerville's first inclusive playground, building on community collaboration, highlighting inclusive play, featuring both active and passive recreation opportunities, featuring educational features that foster learning and exploration, providing shade and comfort to children as well as caregivers and school staff, reconfiguring the site to allow for the playground expansion while meeting the school's needs and improving the safety of bus drop-off and the parking lot, and then developing a sustainable stormwater strategy that will use best practices and really build a resilient park that'll help the city meet a lot of the green, wonderful goals that we've got. So what is inclusive play? It's sort of the highest possible bar. There's accessibility, physical access, meeting the Americans with Disability Act. That's sort of the baseline minimum standard. Universal design is the next level up from that gets talked about and is really about recognizing the need for design to be used without adaptation or distinctly specialized design that separates people. And then inclusive design is a higher bar than that really is about going beyond just physical access and designing for all ages, all abilities, everywhere on the social-emotional spectrums and so forth, to promote social justice, to promote confidence, community connection, and really allow everyone to fully engage to the greatest extent possible at the same level and really to be together in the space. And so that's the bar we're striving for here. So looking back quickly at meeting one, we presented a site analysis of, what's on the existing site, how is it organized? We looked at the circulation, the access. These are 4 site analysis diagrams from that first presentation. And I encourage folks, if you missed it, feel free to go back. And I think there's a video on the Summer Boys page of the previous presentation. We did slope analysis. We looked at a whole lot of site photos and so forth. We looked at where the existing parking is and how it's divided and what the circulation is and so forth. And from there, we presented 3 different schematic design options that had a different variety of features. And this is, a recap of what those looked like. They should be familiar to folks if you took the survey. But a range of, different configurations for where the playground goes. How do we treat the topography? Is it a full basketball court, a half court, bigger than a full court? How do we treat the entrance, etc.? And a bunch of different a menu of choices for people to react to. So then we put out a second survey, which got us terrific feedback and 225 responses. We were blown away at the level of interest, involvement, and feedback we got, which has been terrific. And some of the questions were really clearly answered. People want a full basketball court. That was really clear. Some of them were a lot more opinions were much closer mixed, and we're trying to find ways to sort of thread the needle and satisfy as many people as we can, in terms of how to use the wall in people's orders of preference. Do we build up against the wall to create topography? Do we emphasize providing a space to play wall ball? Do we create a climbing wall with handholds on the wall? And there was a real preference for activating that wall space and getting people engaged with it. Building up against the wall was really popular. Creating a climbing wall, in aggregate was fairly popular. Wall ball is clearly popular if you ask the kids. So it was how do we thread that needle? We looked at different styles of play equipment, post and platform style structures with ramp access, taller net-based structures, ground-based play, more obstacle course, monkey bar, parkour type things. And as you can see again, as the survey data told us, the opinions on that were also fairly well divided. So we're trying to fit some of everything into the final design to really take that into account. Seating, generally people really liked the idea of flexible use seating forms that could be used in different ways. And then the fire access lane, which runs across the top of the plan and ran across the top of all three schemes, we need to keep open for utility access. So when we asked about which of the options resonated the most with people, clearly the answer was active play. So I think hopefully you'll see all that reflected in things. And then when we asked about which of the overall plans people preferred, there was a clear preference for Plan B, and I'll swing back really briefly to show that, which was the one that had the basketball court tucked in on the left side, play equipment in the middle, a shade structure to things, and a pretty clear organization to it, and the modular seating. But then when we dove into the responses to the following question, which I don't have clear data on here in the presentation, the reasons people liked it and what they liked about it and what people liked about the other plans, we took all of that feedback into account as we were working through the final design. So we also got a bunch of good input from, as I said, city staff and other departments, public safety, engineering, DPW, who I think as this past week has reminded us, despite climate change going on, winter is still around, snow removal is still an issue, and logistical concerns are really big. My younger child has been complaining that over at the East, yeah, they have recess and they go outdoors, but the DPW hasn't been able to clear the basketball court because of how the access is to it, which is totally not DPW's fault. And it means that they're outdoors, but there's not great play spaces. And we really want to think ahead on that sort of question. So we've got a proposed design plan that is a lot like option B, but with some things shifted around based on what the DPW and the school community and the CPAC folks that we've talked to and everyone else kind of gave us their feedback as well as the input from that. So walking through it quickly, we've got, the adjusted parking lot on the right with a new entry experience, ADA compliant ramp access up from Elm Street, which there currently isn't, that gets us up to a nice level area around and in front of all of the school doors that leads right into the playground space, a fully fenced and enclosed playground. One of the things that really came out of those logistical conversations is the idea of the basketball court being in sort of the bottom right corner of the playground, which enables them a clearer path to get it cleared more promptly and will provide for a much more usable space. It also allows us to do some maneuvering to capture some of the drainage into a rain garden and so on. And then we have a sort of central plaza space with seating under trees, a shade structure, And what we're really excited about is a very cool, very inclusive focused playground area. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on that and on the phasing and what you're likely to see. So the plan to build this summer, and this is a zoom in on that shows sort of the condition. There's a red dashed line coming down the plan that is at the limits of the current playground fencing. From there over to about the projection from the stairwell in the school becomes new playground space that will have temporary paving with asphalt and line striping, but the permanent new basketball and multi-sport goals installed. The fencing will extend to surround all that in. I don't know why it rolled back on me there. And we'll get the new entry sidewalk, so we'll have fully accessible routes up from Cherry and Elm to a level plaza area with an entry shade structure with some seating and bike parking below part of it that really highlights the entry so that as you're looking up from Elm Street or in from Cherry Street, you really can see and focus on where that entrance is. There's a entry plaza with colored concrete paving. We're looking to sort of cast the Kennedy School K into the paving. And then we've got a 27 space parking lot that'll also have the site's stormwater system underneath it, a few rain gardens in key areas around the edges of that to help with the stormwater infiltration. Two of those spaces are ADA van accessible spaces that connect to the crosswalk at the closest point we can get them to the entry and still have circulation that works for public safety equipment and fire apparatus to get through and in. And then site lighting for the parking lot is in the works, new plantings all around. Trying to think of what the other key points were. Oh, yes. And then we have two drop-off areas that aren't highlighted on this with striping, but I think actually they would end up striped out and marked. The plan and the intent is to dedicate a portion of it as ADA access drop-off spaces, a portion just for more generic drop-off and a portion for bus drop-off. And we're working out the configuration of where all of those fit, but obviously we want to prioritize getting parent drop-off, which the Elm Beacon Connector project will also improve drop-off on Elm Street itself, which is important to note. So there'll be and significantly expanded bike parking. I think we end up with parking for 28 bikes as compared to the 10 to 12 that there are now on the site in the racks here. Well, here, right? Throws me off every time. The parking lot getting smaller really does expand the playground's footprint by quite a bit. And then the majority of the existing play area will simply stay and we'll sort of stitch the fencing together temporarily at the corner to make the connection. And so that's what, by the end of this summer, if everything goes smoothly, that's what everyone should be seeing for the coming year. And all your kids will have a great expanded space with an extra basketball court and a pair of futsal goals, a third hoop on the side of it. And then we can roll into phase two. And next summer, we come in and we can jazz this place up. So the basketball court gets fencing on the other two sides with a double maintenance gate and permanent paint team benches. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a nice concrete plaza with a shade structure over top of a portion of it. And then another area with modular seating, not movable, but like blocks. You'll see an image of them in a little bit. Underneath a grove of trees set in porous pavement, the way the city's current standards have been going. And then we've got a very inclusive design play area where there's sort of a rubber pattern that will highlight the safe paths versus the active areas versus the slopes. And the main feature is, you come in, you come back, and then from the bottom corner next to this seating wall adjacent to a rain garden, um, there's a path that gently slopes up, stopping at some play events along the way, to a raised area at the top of the hill that is about 4 feet up, give or take, from the main play level. And we've got play structures. This is the play design is not quite finalized, but this is the general direction it's going. We'll have play structures that connect via ramping, play structure that's more set down on the ground, embankment slides, with what gets called a dignity exit, a place for someone to wait if they use a mobility device until the mobility device can get back to them, and so forth. There are highlights around things like spinners and slide exits. There are pathways shown to the major transfer and entry points into the structures. There's a large accessible carousel. We've got a bit of climbing wall on the tallest part of the wall, which it got pointed out that having the climbing give access to potentially to the fences that would go out to Sartwell Street was probably problematic, but we were able to tuck it at an area where that wouldn't be an issue, and so kids can get some of that climbing experience. There were requests to, over top of the utility area, put a chain link roof so that balls aren't getting stuck on the netting anymore. We'll do a variety of playground graphics in that fire lane, with probably a light colored seal coat underneath them so that we can reduce the heat island effect. Hopscotch, Foursquare, Nine Square, obstacle course jumping sort of things, different kinds of activities, play equipment on the hillside, and a variety of cool play features scattered through that I will flip through. Yeah, we'll go through it as we get through it. So the play structure images that are in here are all preliminary. They're the intent, they're the general direction we're going. We're still finalizing which manufacturers, exact footprints, exactly what play elements are on any given structure to make it as inclusive as we can. But this is sort of the general direction. So we're thinking, as I mentioned, two sort of focal play structures. This one, which is play structure A, and it's a ramp access from the top of the 4-foot mound into the main structure, can get fully accessible throughout the upper level. We're trying to get engaging play events in that space. There's a bit of a higher area with roof, couple of slides that come down, a number of different play events that really mesh with what the kids and the other feedback that we've gotten have struck at everyone as important. And then we have, potentially a second separate play structure that's more down at ground level. We also had some promising discussions. We just don't have a final version of it yet to explore. Exploring the idea of linking structure A and structure B into one potential structure that might have ramp connections all the way from the ground level up through the structure, around the various play events, still providing a variety of types of play, and up to the top of the mountain, so that there really are as many options as we can, and that as many kids as we can get into all the structures. But this design, we want to have also structures that are accessible by transfer, where you can move out of a mobility device and actually interact with. This is sort of a flexible net climber where it has very small openings so that it's not a particular difficulty to climb, as opposed to like an open cargo net. Different belt climbers, things with handholds, hand support, different sorts of ways to access, engaging, challenging routes and so forth, so that kids can really go wild and have a great time on some really fun structures. We've got a ropes course where we've taken a hexagonal one that the manufacturers originally suggested and said, well, that's great, but let's open up one side so that somebody can get into the middle and at least be, in the space and interacting with their friends who are using the equipment in other ways and so forth. Spinners on one end, maybe a balance beam on the other, different sorts of activities for kids to engage with at their own level. We'd like to include some sort of sensory play structure. This is a wheelchair accessible tunnel. Someone in a mobility device can go right through the middle, interact with the play panels, friends climbing, engaging all around them and so forth, and really get a cool functional play structure that's something different. We've got a set of swaying log steppers with handrails, and in the proposed design, that actually is going up the ramp, so it's another way of not the ramp, the hillside. So it's another way of accessing that upper level by kind of working your way up with something a little bit more challenging. We're looking into a group spinner where the kids can get a bunch of them on there, have a great time. Wheelchair accessible glider rocker that one of the things that folks will note is kind of not in any of the plans are swings. And to get some of that vestibular motion, the real sensory experience of swinging, of swaying, of rocking back and forth, um, a glider can fit a whole lot more kids engaged in play together compared to traditional swings, adaptive swing seats, dish swings, friendship swings. All of those are tough to fit into a schoolyard because they take up a lot of space and there are a lot of safety concerns on them. And so based on the feedback we've been getting, we steered a little bit away from swings towards other types of, motion that'll really stimulate that vestibular sense and can engage the whole community in it. To that end, too, we've got a big group seesaw that's this is really, in my opinion, sort of, I talked about some things will likely we haven't figured out the manufacturer. These guys do the best inclusively designed group seesaw I have seen. It's accessible by transfer. There's foot support, there's hand support, there's back support. Um, there are multiple ways to engage with it. A whole lot of kids can fit on it, and it really promotes that playing together. But on the other hand, I've seen one kid on each side having a blast on it as if it wasn't a group feature. So it's really great. We've got a little play hut that's sort of tucked off into a corner that hopefully it's intended to provide a little bit of a space for sensory play, for self-regulation space if a kid needs a little bit of a quieter area. So it's tucked away from more of the active play, but we'll make sure that while it gives a sense of shelter, there's still enough sightlines and visibility in there for recess monitors to know what's going on and if a kid needs help or more attention or whatever. We're looking into things like hangout hammocks, which don't really swing. They just kind of can wobble a little. And they're also spaced and designed so that there are companion seating sort of spaces in and next to them. They can fit a few kids, a lot of kids, and they really provide just a social space. As I mentioned, looking at, accessible slides with a dignity exit, we are hoping not to do stainless steel unless we can site it just right so that it's not getting sun, because that would get too hot. But there are other options out there. This is just sort of the best image of it we had at short notice. This also shows you a little bit in the photo. There's a lighter colored area around the slide exit. There's a different highlight on the slopes of the slide itself, of the hill itself, and there's a brighter color warning strip at the top. That gives sort of a sense of the ways we're talking about using the rubber surface to help communicate, and we'll get good contrasting colors in there. into that patterning. There are hillside climbing elements that we've worked into spots, whether that's climbing handholds on the slope of the rubber or rubber curb steps that provide a way up to the top. We'd like to work in communication board and other sorts of interactive elements that encourage inclusion, encourage all the kids to recognize that, their full range of peers are here using this space. Like I mentioned, there's a climbing wall. There's a photo from Morse Kelly, one of our projects quite a while ago. We'll incorporate, sensory activity and play panels around the perimeter to really provide a wide variety of experiences. And then, as I mentioned, we've got modular seating. So each of these, this is an image of a bunch of basically, think of them like Lego bricks, and they can stack on top of each other like this. They don't move, they're permanently anchored, but you can configure them in various ways. So we can create those with multiple levels. The levels can give back support, the levels can get a group of kids sitting around them in different ways. There are armrests that fit onto some of these. We can provide spaces so that there's companion seating for someone in a mobility device to fit in, and so forth. So those are scattered, little clusters of them in a number of places throughout the playground, a whole lot of them under that group of trees that I mentioned in the main plaza area, and so forth. And then around the rain garden, we have seating height walls. There's an image here from a school we did quite a while ago in Charlestown, but we've done them in a number of places since. Always really popular. And then an image of the playground graphics that went in recently at the Brown School, which might be familiar to folks. And then here are some quick images of the shade structures. These are very much preliminary, in process. Since we looked at this, we're not sure about the colors. We're still working on the exact form. But the idea is that there's a there's a higher structure projecting out from the current building. And actually, this rendering showed it a little bit back from the corner of the building. The intent is now to bring it a little further forward, so that it actually provides a visual marker and cue of where the building entrance is that'll lead people back in. And we've aligned the posts with the existing entry post that splits the front doors of the school up anyway, so that it shouldn't provide any disruptions to the entry process. And then we've got a second lower one that sticks out sideways a little bit under that to cover a few reused granite benches from the front of the school and stick some of our bike racks underneath there. This does not have the new sidewalks or anything shown. We weren't attempting to model that. We just wanted to get the intent of that shade structure across to everybody. And then in the plaza, we do something kind of like what you see on the bottom right, which is a sloping structure that has the low end towards a low end towards the playground, and then a roof that pitches up toward the school so that it becomes a covering for if there's a school assembly and all the kids can be sitting and gathering up on the fire lane. Or it becomes a place to put movable picnic tables that can get out of the way, to host, parent-teacher association book fairs or other events and so forth underneath. And it really becomes kind of a central focal point to the schoolyard that provides some shade and some respite over a concrete plaza. And that's really the gist of our presentation. Do you want to talk a little bit about the next steps, John, or do you want me to cover that?
Thanks, DJ. I think we
Yeah.
can hold off the next steps until we go through all of our questions,
Yeah,
unless people want to know about this. But let's talk about the design, and what you've gone
perfect.
over, and then I can kind of end with next steps.
That
Um,
sounds
s-
great.
so The way this is going to go is there's the raise hand feature. If you have any questions, please use that raise hand feature and I'll call on you and you'll be able to unmute yourself. You can also add any comments in the chat. I see there's a few chat comments, so I'll read those in a moment. Also, if anything is a little unclear to you, if you'd like some more explanations on any aspect of this design, we're happy to go into it. It's
Yes,
definitely a very
absolutely.
large design, very complex. So we are happy to kind of dive into the nitty-gritty of it. We talk about an embankment slide, there's an embankment slope, a ramp that goes up to that. If you're a little bit confused on how that works, how the basketball court works, or any of that stuff, we are happy to kind of explain that in more depth to make it clearer to you.
I'm actually going to pause my sharing for just a moment so that I can pull up the chat window myself. Because oh, there we go. I wasn't able to get it.
So I'm seeing no hands raised. So I think I'm just going to start going through some of the chat comments, and we can kind of pop in any raised hands as we're kind of going through this. Um, so one thing I did just want to mention is DJ was mentioning the Elm Beacon Connector project. There's going to be some additional drop-offs along Elm that include that drop-off area. It's not going to be parking spaces, but 15-minute drop-off kind of loading zone. That's coming in the Elm Beacon project, which will be very helpful to uh, vehicular drop-off at the Kennedy School. Um, One question from Michelle was, can the chain link roof be slanted to prevent balls from stationing on top and instead roll down? Yes, that's exactly the intent here. We're going to try and pitch it back into the play space so any balls
Yes.
that land up
Yeah.
there will come back down to the playground and prevent the vice principal from having to use a 20-foot broom to bang the balls off of that net.
Yeah,
Um,
the netting that's up there now is working great at keeping balls from going into the fence, but then it's at a low point in the netting. So we want something a little more rigid that the balls will just roll back down into the play space.
mhm. Um, Another comment I see, there's one raised hand, but Andrew mentioned that sightlines look potentially better with this style than previous. Yes, so that's kind of one of the main goals that the school administration
Yeah.
was highlighting as a very important aspect to this playground design. So the whole idea here with some embankment hillside is tucked away in the corner, kind of creating an amphitheater where you can look down across that whole play space. Or if you're kind of where the K is in this design, looking across the whole playground, you can see everything and see up that slope. The main structures that we're using are trying to have a lot of perforations in them so that you can
Yeah.
see into the structure to see if any kid needs help or if anything's kind of going wrong in those
Yeah.
structures. With
Yeah.
that, I'm going to switch over to Holly, who has her hand raised. Holly, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Thanks, John. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a great design. I'm really pleased with all the accessible and inclusive features that you've added, and I think you did a great job of taking all the comments and getting everything into this design. I just had one question,
Yeah.
and that was, DJ, you said there were going to be two van spots there in the parking
So
lot?
So the parking lot has two ADA spaces with a slightly wider than 8-foot aisle between them. So my understanding is that those would both count as van spots, yes.
Do you have the dimensions of the HP spots themselves, though?
I believe they're 8.5, or I can't remember if they're 8.5 or 9 by 18.5.
Believe they're drawn currently at 9. We were able to get it at
Okay.
that size.
Thanks, Preston.
Yeah. Mhm.
Great. Thank you for answering that question.
Yeah.
And one more. Technically, you only need one fan spot, and you can do
Yeah.
Oh no, that's with the drop off. Anyways, we just tried
Yeah.
to maximize what we
Yeah.
could when it came to providing the accessibility from vehicles.
It is worth noting that we've sort of been trying to balance, since Holly brought up parking, um, the fact that during the day and during drop off and pickup, nominally officially the parking lot is staff parking only, and there is the opportunity for people that need it and for the buses to do drop off within the loop But we also are trying to recognize the fact that even though officially the parking lot is signed as staff parking only at all times, if we build a destination inclusive playground here like we're trying to do, there are going to be people using this evenings, weekends, summer, etc. And some of those people are going to need parking. So we needed to make sure that that parking was as accessible as is feasible given the limitations we're dealing with, which is, fully compliant and ADA accessible. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Holly. Um, all right, I'm gonna just bounce to two more comments in the chat, and then we'll bounce back to the next raised hand. So Louisa mentioned that her son, age 5, just asked if you'll have solar panels on the shade structures. Solar panels are a wonderful idea, and I'll definitely talk more with our Office of Sustainability and the Environment. But I've had two different conversations about solar panels, and the thing that people have said to me is the cost of the infrastructure that all of the solar panels have to tie into is so expensive that unless you're doing a full parking lot size or a full roof, that the cost of the infrastructure for the amount of electricity that you're getting back is potentially not worth it. I'm happy to look into this more with our Office of Sustainability and Environment, also see if they potentially have any grants or funding that can help support this.
Yeah.
If we do find those, we were very happy to kind of incorporate that because these shade structures are going to be a hard roof anyways. I
Yeah.
think solar panels on top of them would be a great addition to them.
And just to follow up on that, John, I don't know if we've talked about this yet, because this is Luisa's son's question is very apropos. CBA is working on a project up in Medford right now that's close to finishing construction. And part of it is one of the basketball courts is a covered court with a pavilion that has solar panels going in on it. And I believe the city did get some of those grants, so I can get more information from them on which grants they went after and pass that on to you, and we can see if it's feasible or possible for certain. And another possibility that we can talk about, John, is we could theoretically design the shade structure with enough capacity to support it in the future and put a conduit system in that could get retrofitability to put shade panels on later.
Yes,
Would be
those are
short money and forward thinking. So
yes, I think forward thinking is a wonderful
yeah,
opportunity here. So if we can't afford it at the time being, like
yeah,
DJ said, we can definitely structurally support it and make sure that it's an opportunity that we can plan for in the future. But yes, DJ, that would be wonderful. I'll look into some grants with our OSE department and see
yep,
what we can come up with. Um, then I said I was going to take two questions from the chat. So Rona's question was, where does rainwater go when it drains from the shade structure? DJ, would you like to take this one?
sure. The shade structures near the entrance, our thinking is that in both cases it pitches back so that it's towards towards the building, but then we'd have a gap at the back. We are in talks with the shade structure folks about getting gutters on those so that we can bring them to downspouts that would enter the plant bed outside the main office. We may tie them into drainage if that makes sense to do. We're still looking at exactly where it goes, but it's definitely not going to drain towards the towards the entry side of the structure, which is key and helpful there. For the larger structure in the playground, that's a good question. I mean, to some extent, all of the surface runoff, if the shade structure weren't there, the water would hit the concrete plaza or other paving, and then it pitches towards the rubber, which is pretty porous in and of itself. And then anything that gets past that ends up in the rain garden and does some pre-treatment infiltration before it ties into the subsurface drainage system. So we're trying to capture and percolate as much of the rainwater as possible throughout this whole design with the way we've pitched things. Yeah.
Thank you,
Probably
BJ.
the answer is to a gutter to get the flow to somewhere where it'll be out of the way of the playground and not cause an icy spot. Yeah, hopefully that
Yes.
answers Rona's question.
And then there's going to be some stormwater infrastructure underneath
Yes. Yeah.
the parking lot itself that will help
Yeah.
do all that green infrastructure that we're looking for here. All right, Andrew Cannon, you've had your hand up. You should be able to speak.
You may have to unmute yourself on your end, Andrew.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
No.
Yes,
Yep,
perfect.
got you now.
All right. Sorry about that. So I had a quick question about the basketball court.
Sure.
I noticed that there's 3 basketball hoops. Kind of a two-parter. Are they all adjustable? If not, is it the one that's in the middle? Is that the adjustable one or?
Yeah. Sure.
Gotcha.
So
Thank you.
yeah, we looked into this, we talked to manufacturers a bunch and so forth, and it lines up, unfortunately, with what we had previously been told and heard, which is that the adjustable hoops are designed, they're great for home use and everything else, but they're really tough to use in a public park setting because either they're incredibly inconvenient and difficult to adjust, which makes it not really worthwhile to have them adjustable, or they're really easy and convenient to adjust and they break all the time. So the strong advice we got from the various, product reps and suppliers we talked to, and this matches, like I said, what we've seen in our other projects, is to have the main set of hoops at a height and then to have a third, potentially a third lower height hoop, sort of at mid-court, tucked out of the way, for another height. So we can look into and discuss with the community a little bit more what height to set those at. And there are versions where it is, nominally adjustable, but the adjustment is DPW coming in there with a lift to support the thing and unbolting it if down the road the decision gets made that, oh, it got installed at 8 foot, but we wanted a 10 foot, then they could come in and raise it up or vice versa, as a fairly doable process. But that from a day-to-day standpoint, they likely will be fixed height hoops. We'll keep looking. If we find a product that seems durable enough to use an adjustable height hoop in a setting like this, great, but we also don't want to install something that 3 years from now is going to constantly have a broken actuator pin and not be adjustable.
And the one thing I do just want to push is that this is something that we have heard a lot from the community, and it's something that we definitely need to kind of look into more. I think we can even explore kind of custom hoops because just hearing how important this is from a lot of people, we definitely do need to find a solution to this. Adjustable hoops would be the best option. And if that's something custom that we need to explore the possibility of if it's possible, that's something that I'm very interested in looking towards, or we can go for something more semi-adjustable based on the school's ability and put multiple, like DJ said, multiple heights for those hoops.
Yeah, I guess I'd phrase it, John, that we haven't given up on the idea yet, but we also don't want to promise you at this meeting tonight that they will be, right? Because we're trying to find a version that works. That
Right.
ties really well into the next question from the chat, which was, will the existing basketball courts be open this summer? And the answer is the existing courts, I'll flip to the phase 1 plan, should be open. There will be temporary construction fencing. So what we might end up with is sort of like 1.5 courts really open, and the bottom right corner of this court might feel a little clipped. On the other hand, they might be able to adjust the fencing so it's not. That said, the primary access to those for the duration of the summer is going to be from the pool stairs. Does remind me one feature I forgot to mention, so I'll hop back quickly to that, was that in addition to the playground being fenced the whole way around, the school asked for us to put a double gate or a gate at the bottom of the pool steps, far enough in that there's not a security or visibility worry to it, that you don't get to the bottom of the steps and can't get out or something, but that will let a clean flow happen most of the time. And then when for recess, the school needs to be able to close that gate to secure access to the playground, they can. So with that diversion, back to your regular scheduled questions.
So the next question from Michelle is the shade structure large enough to host events school-wide, such as eighth grade graduation, or is it just smaller events, 20 to 30 people?
I would say that it is large enough to partially host that. You could definitely fit more than 20 to 30 people under it. It looks like it's about
About 35 feet in
yeah, you're
width.
just spending stuff.
And then it
So
projects
35 on the long end.
yeah. Um I can't remember. I don't know if it's on the left side, it's like 10 to 15. On the right, it's 15 to 20.
Something like that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a good size. It definitely will be able to host um parts of eighth grade graduation. If you've got a lot of parents and so forth visiting, I don't think 100 people are going to fit under it necessarily, but probably bigger than 20 to 30. Um, and we'll do a study for that. But part of the intent of pointing it towards the building too is that, in the morning, that area is pretty well shaded. In the afternoon, it'll get some shade from the shade structure. So the goal is to provide a focal point, a gathering space for those sorts of events, but it may not cover everybody.
Thank you. The next question we got was from Jess. Fifth grader group chat is curious about the height of the tallest slide. Think specifically to that embankment.
Yeah. Yeah. Oops. I'm going to flip to that. So I believe that the tallest slide is likely to be this guy, and it's likely to be an 8-foot slide at the highest point. We do want to get a nice tall one on there. Once you start going above, I think an 8-foot slide, I need to double check my regulations. You start to need enclosure around the top of the slide, and it becomes more of a tube slide, which presents again some of those visibility and so forth concerns that the school was having. So probably 8 feet. We might be able to push it a little bit taller and have a tube at just the upper portion. And we're still working on it, but definitely 8 might get taller.
DJ, would you mind just also showing that in the
Oh,
section, highlighting that slide in the section view as well?
the elevation of it, you mean?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yes. So that's this guy in the upper left here. Pretty long slide, and I think that is an 8-foot platform. Again, placeholder structure. And then on the other structure, this one I believe is a 7-foot height that sort of has a swoop down to the side, if this is what we end up going with. And that style of slide I've seen on other structures, and from personal experience, it's wicked fun.
Thank you, DJ.
Yeah.
So Crystal asked the question of difference in staff parking. How is that accommodated? So the staff parking is being reduced by 15 spaces in this specific lot. So reducing the total amount of parking spaces at the Kennedy School to, I believe, about 43 spaces. Um,
I think it's no, the old lot was 43. There were
sorry,
70.
sorry, the total,
Yeah.
okay,
So the end result is
27 spaces.
it's in the mid 50s.
Yes.
Spaces.
And so how are we accommodating this? So obviously we need to expand the playground to fit all the inclusive elements, fit these ramps, fit these sports elements, try and fit some of these larger events that we're hosting out in the space. With that, we need to reduce the parking there. The Elm Beacon Connector project, working with mobility. We've done a analysis of parking, street parking in the greater area. There is the ability to accommodate that street parking. I know right now with all the snow, it is very tough to envision that, but
Yeah.
we are also having conversations with the parking department to see if there's any option of making staff parking during certain hours of the day during streets along Cherry and Sartwell. We don't have any answers from them yet on that, along with conversations about just moving that larger truck that consumes at least 4 of the parking spaces during the snow months, and seeing if we can relocate that to another storage space in the city. So those are the ways that we're trying to accommodate those additional spaces.
And we did target the total amount of parking works out to based on the proportions we've heard from people about, who among the staff drive and park and so forth versus take public transit or bike or walk. There are, hypothetically, assuming everyone who said they walk doesn't end up deciding to drive, there will be enough spaces to accommodate all of the staff on the school property at the current staffing levels and so forth, based on what we've seen in that mobility conversation. I recognize that some of those are going to be on the Sartwell Street lot or on the back lot behind the cafetorium doors, and that's a little more awkward and inconvenient to get to. But we didn't want to cut it further because we recognize the staff does need the parking. So it's that balancing act of all the uses John talked about.
Mhm. Also inherently in an inclusive playground is having some parking
Oh, well, yeah,
associated
for
with it
sure.
for that ease. So we do definitely need to preserve some of the parking spaces. And I do apologize. We are removing some spaces. I feel for the teachers. It's this balancing act, but it is playground that's going to be around for the next 20 to 30 years. And this improvement is going to be a wonderful improvement that we as a city are very excited for. Um, I'm not seeing any other questions except for some wonderful news from Councillor Clingan saying that City Council voted to approve the funds for the CPA allocation for this project. So we are all signed and have all of our money. So this is some wonderful news. I really
Yeah,
appreciate Councillor Clingan. If Councillor Clingan is still here, I know he said he had to jump off,
say
but
he was jumping off, but
I would love to recognize you. Anyways, thank you very much, Councillor Clingan, for that wonderful news.
so Nicole asked at the tail end of the chat
Yes.
after John said there weren't questions, can we confirm if there's enough spots for specialists and paraprofessionals as well? Um, to the best of my understanding, yes, having talked to Principal Marshall, that was the sort of staffing numbers we were basing things on, was including those folks as well in the counts.
Yes, exactly. And if there's some form of accommodations, we can kind of
Yeah,
explore those options as well in the parking lot itself.
yeah. And we are looking more for you know, options that get other sorts of parking spaces nearby, if not in the physical parking lots on school property that John talked about. So, yeah. Um,
So I'm not seeing any other hands or comments. Does anyone have any questions? We're happy to kind of
yeah.
re-explain anything if you're a little bit confused on anything. Happy to hear any more input.
go to the fun plan instead of the instead of just the parking lot.
Thank you very much, Kate, for those kind comments. I think while people are still thinking about this, I can jump into the next steps, DJ.
Oh yeah,
And if
that
anyone
sounds
has
great.
any comments while I'm or questions while I'm going over this, please feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat, and I'm happy to kind of circle back to anything. So next steps for this project, a recording of this presentation will be up on the Summer Voice page shortly, probably Monday. Just with it being so late tonight. A recording, the PDF of the presentation with that alt text is already on the web page. So feel free to share that document with anyone who has any questions about that. Feel free to send them to the Summer Voice page. Please don't scan that QR code, as we now know it does not work. But I will happily take any of that information and happily answer anyone's questions on that. So any comments, questions, or concerns you have about this project, please feel free to email me. My email's up on the web on this slide. You can also find it on that Summer Voice webpage as well. So next, we are going to continue our conversations with the school staff to kind of finalize this design, take all of your input and concerns, and try and really sharpen this design to its final form, make sure that we're really hitting all of our marks and making sure that the schools and the community's needs are met. Um, I'm saying once funded by City Council, but now that we're funded by City Council, we're going to be looking to put that first phase, the parking lot phase, out to bid. Like DJ said, that will encompass the parking lot area as well as a temporary basketball court. And the existing 2.5 basketball courts will be available for use during that time of construction with limited access. And then once we flip over, that temporary basketball court will be the space for kids to use as we're working on that playground. That second phase will come the following summer, so the summer of 2027. And
Yep.
then I keep the Summer Voice page fairly well updated, so you can always find more information on the Summer Voice webpage. But if you have any questions on any of the documents there, please feel free to reach out to me.
Yep. Yeah, and the other exciting news is that the way that the phasing is structured lets us continue those conversations to really make sure that the design of the playground works for everybody, including, circling back up with CPAC and the Commission for Persons with Disabilities, I would assume, and double checking all of that one more time, three more times, whatever it takes, right? And
Yes.
then while that first phase is out to bid because of the way it's structured. So it means we
Yes.
can hit pedal to the metal, get this project moving, and then still have time to get the design just right so that we're creating a real gem here.
Yes, also helps us with the long lead times of playground
Yes,
products. These
that
are
too.
months and months out. So really gives us a big head start where we can kind of order those products and not have to worry about them arriving on site. So when it's time and the school closes for the summer, we can get in and do our work as quickly as possible.
And hopefully next year is not full of snow and we don't have 4 days of extra school in the summer and we can get going really tight up to the end of school.
That is very true.
Yeah. Yeah, this one, if we had been planning on June 18th, we'd be a week out from that now.
Very true. So again, thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for the
Yeah.
school administration for all of your help and all of the different groups that we've reached out to. All of your support really makes this design the best design possible. Please, again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Happy to field a call, happy to have an email with you. Happy for you to stop by City Hall. Well, we're in the Tufts Administration Building, but happy for you to stop by and have a conversation about this project. And thank you all so much for carving out some time to speak with us tonight. And with that, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank
Let's
you all.
stop for a moment so we can all wave goodbye.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Bye.
Excellent.